The South African Human Rights Commission has today released its State of Human Rights report, highlighting concerns about basic services as well as racism, which it says remains the most frequently reported form of discrimination in South Africa. The report issued today underscores the persistence of racism as well as hate speech despite constitutional guarantees of equality. Let's take this further with the Commissioner from the Human Rights Commission, Dr. Henk Boshoff. Good to have your time on the SABC this evening, sir. So let's start with the issue of racism. 31 years into a democratic dispensation, this remains a reality in South Africa. I wonder, though, if it's getting worse or if you're simply, as the Commission, hearing more about it through people launching these complaints or submitting them.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. It's the Commission. You know, how we operate is we act and react on complaints that we receive. And the State of Human Rights report clearly indicates the number of complaints with regards to racism and hate speech that we've received over the last year or so. We also act, when we observe on social media, for example, when utterances of racism or there's utterances that equates to hate speech, we also launch our own accord investigations, and we try to deal with all these complaints as effectively and efficiently as we can. But it is a serious concern. I do think that there's an escalation with regards to utterances of racism, also of hate speech, and the Commission is extremely concerned about these complaints in particular.
But realistically, everyone talks about, for example, I remember a few years ago when we started to see people facing charges for being racist in South Africa, that was welcomed at the time. But what is sufficient deterrence if even that has not stopped the racists among us from being racist? And do we ultimately then just simply have to accept that this is a country with a history of racism and that it will remain pervasive?
No, I don't think we must just accept it. From our side, we are really doing everything possible within our limited means and limited resources. The difficulty that we face is that many of these utterances are made anonymously under pseudonyms on your social media platforms. But it's something that we need to address. We need to fight this phenomenon in South Africa. It's simply not acceptable. It's 30 years plus into democracy, and we still see the racism and hate speech occurring on a daily basis. You can just open any social media platform on any day, and I'm sure you will find something that falls within the definition of racism.
You've also today in the briefing spoken about xenophobia, a huge conversation in South Africa, especially in the last 20 years or so. Recently, that word came up again when the likes of Operation Dudula were barring what they said were undocumented migrants from accessing public healthcare centers. But in the conversation about xenophobia at this stage, how are we doing in terms of telling the difference between what is xenophobia and what is legitimate grievance from South Africans?
Well, I think this is also a very serious challenge in the country at the moment. And even the Human Rights Commission is extremely criticized by society and the broader public sector or community, that about the way we approach the challenge of xenophobia. But the reality is that the Human Rights Commission strictly implements the provisions of the Constitution. We strictly implement rulings that have been made by our courts. It's not a subjective approach with regards to our approaches. We are more than aware of the unhappiness, and even recently we took note of the media interview that the Premier of Gauteng had with regards to illegal informal settlements, and we will be engaging with the Premier as well and have a cordial discussion with him, especially with regards to the statement he made that those structures would be demolished at 2 o'clock in the morning. We are concerned, there are children in those informal settlements, and if you remove a structure or you demolish a structure at 2 o'clock in the morning, surely you are also disregarding the human rights of children and women and innocent people.
Right.
So, but it is a problem. It is a challenge, and we are trying to address it at all times. We are aware.
On those two issues, two issues that you mentioned, you speak about speaking to the politicians, the political leadership, but I wonder how effective that is when you consider that much of the anger and the sentiment, i.e. in the anti-immigrant sentiment, is at grassroots level, right, where it is prevalent ultimately, and that's where some of the skirmishes then play out. On the issue of housing, it's one thing to dialogue with the people in power, but when you look at Gauteng and its unique predicament where there are people arriving in the province by their thousands, they will need a place to stay. How much does conversation move the needle when ultimately the real fixes are not being seen to manifest?
Well, the Commission can only do what legislation and the Constitution permits it to do. So on a regular basis, we do interact with with the relevant ministers, with the executive authorities. We interact with your mayors and portfolio committees, etc. We also, from our side, have advocacy sessions. Our provincial officers go out and listen to the concerns raised by ordinary people. We do try to educate them. We convene these advocacy workshops on a regular basis, almost on a weekly basis, not only to deal with issues about xenophobia, but on many issues, the sabotage or the vandalism of municipal infrastructure, for example, where a lot of foreign objects are just found in your sewers, etc. So from our side, everything with limited resources, a limited budget, we are doing everything possible to implement our mandate and to do whatever we are allowed to do in terms of legislation.
And just lastly, how much worse do you think this is going to be? Some of these issues are going to be the racism and everything else we've just discussed in a country where inequality is growing, the poor becoming poorer in some instances, while the rich majority is acquiring more. The rich minority, pardon me.
Correct, you are 100% correct. And that is why we have emphasized this challenge today when we launched the State of Human Rights in South Africa. Something needs to be done, and all sectors need to take hands. Your government sector, your business sector, your NGOs, civil society, we all need to take hands and find a solution for this challenge. We put government on terms with regards to the socioeconomic rights of our citizens, the fact that inadequate services are being provided to the communities at local government level. We are very, very concerned about local government service delivery. I've requested another meeting with the Minister for Cooperative Governance. We met with the Minister for Water and Sanitation last week. We have partners in higher education. that are assisting us with academic articles and opinion briefs, etc. So it is a challenge. If everyone in the country does not take hands and deal with this challenge, come up with proper ideas and suggestions on how to tackle it, we will not make progress.
Good to talk to you, Dr. Henk Boshoff from the Human Rights Commission, a commissioner with the Commission.